Okay. My conduit moment was the use of telekinesis, launching waste at the vulnerable, or rather venerable, Stammelford, and so it was always presumed I would be most proficient in air and would go on to master it. Truth be told, I fully expected to do so, on my journey towards total dominance of all elements, naturally. I like Alissa. And so, I was incredibly excited to learn the element under the guidance of the distinguished sorceress Agnes, or Agnes of Glanville, Mistress of Air, if we are to be formal, which she always was. Other than my aunt, Agnes was someone I know reasonably well, since as far back as I can remember, she would often visit Aurora, and by extension, myself, so was a frequent present during my childhood. One could argue that my official training began years before I stepped foot in Aretuza, and considering all of the spontaneous lessons and insightful anecdotes I received on behalf of Agnes and Aurora, one would have a solid basis for argument. There's no doubt about it, I had a privileged childhood. I was relatively happy, healthy, and wanted for nothing, the yearning for Aretuza aside. Yet, in hindsight, the main boon of my privilege stemmed from the constant access I had to two of the most prominent women in the wizarding world. Practically no 6-year-old could have boasted such illustrious kinship. I mean no disrespect to Auntie when I say this, but whereas Aurora was, and is well respected and somewhat famous, Agnes was by far the more eminent figure. She is, you see, a living legend. In the not-too-distant past, all mages were men, a fact that will surprise no one. Indeed, there were women who could harness the power of the elements, yet they were merely branded as healers or herbalists, and were disregarded as anything more. Being a human wizard, you see, was a safeguarded status, and only a select few men were officially recognised by their peers, men, as such. Then along came Agnes. Apparently, she had inadvertently summoned a ferocious whirlwind for her conduit event at a very young age. As the story goes, it quickly turned into a raging storm, which reduced a small coastal hamlet to nothing but rubble. I thoroughly believed this tale to be exaggerated, to say the least. Yet, I'd never state such thoughts aloud. Regardless, word soon spread about the miraculous child and finally reached the ears of Giambattista, one of the architects of the Novigrandian Union, along with his peers Jan Becker and Geoffrey Monk. Eager to locate and identify conduits of power, or sources as they're now referred to, Giambattista sought out the young girl, paid her mother handsomely for the child's life, and then subjected her to magical tests, which would later be implemented as entry requirements for the Bannard Academy. Unlike all other children tested before the girl, Agnes amazed the mage with her innate capabilities. She's assured me on numerous occasions that he was indeed amazed, and so was taken under the wings of Monk, Becker, and Giambattista and indoctrinated into the basics of magic. Soon after, Monk gathered some of the gifted children, which were referred to as chosen ones, and of which Agnes was the only girl. He then sailed up Avon, Ypont, and Gwenllen, today more commonly called the Pontar, thank God, to Loch Muine, where he convinced elven sorcerers to teach the younglings the ways of the elder races, and thus Agnes's fame was secured, as she became the first ever woman, well, girl, to obtain the status of sorceress, or enchantress, as she tells it. And that's pretty much all I know about that. I've asked Agnes on numerous occasions to tell me a story about her time with the sages of the Blue Mountains, but upon hearing the request, she always becomes aloof and delays the matter with another day, perhaps. I'm not sure why she's so reluctant to recall that period of her life, but I am adamant that the next time we meet, I shall coerce her into telling me a tale or two. Perhaps some alcohol will loosen her tongue. As I was saying, with the influence of such a woman, and Auntie too, guiding me, you can understand why such lofty expectations were placed upon my small, inexperienced shoulders. For me not to excel at mastering the ways of magic, well, that was simply unacceptable, and there was no excuse. To squander your potential is an affront to all of the less fortunate, Aurora would often tell me. You have the luxury of options, so choose the correct one. And so, I pursued greatness relentlessly, for it was my obligation, or, as I'd frame it now, my burden.